What is up, mortals? It is Sunset here with a new video for you. Welcome to part 3 of What If Deku Had a Sentient Quirk? I just wanted to greet you guys by just saying, sit back and relax. You're in for a treat. So we begin. Izuku and Bakugo both got to the piles of trash. Bakugo had a trash pile that was made up of mostly metal. This was a way to test his quirk out a little more on the safe side. Izuku, on the other hand, had a pile that consisted of metal, wood, and car parts. Izuku had thought quickly, taking a tire and running towards one of the 2 cars the boys had to place items in. They both had to remember the car's total amount of weight they could carry, and so Izuku ran back to the trash, but Bakugo was close behind. Bakugo had 3 flat pieces of metal, placing all 3 pieces in the car. Running back, Bakugo saw Izuku run past him, as a piece of metal had flown past him. Looking at Izuku's trash pile, Bakugo saw a green aura in the shape of a bunny. "What the hell, Usagi? That's unfair!" Bakugo yelled as he got to his trash pile, grabbing a few pieces of metal as Izuku caught the flying piece of metal that flew towards him. "It's not my fault that this is the best way to do this!" Izuku smirked as he put the metal piece in the car. He ran past Bakugo, who seemed to curse Izuku for this helpful quirk. Bakugo then got an idea as he placed the metal in the car. Bakugo started to run as he raised his arms up behind him. They sparked as small but repetitive explosions burst from Bakugo's hands, allowing Bakugo to run much faster as he stopped at his trash pile. Izuku and Bakugo had done these things that had been brought up in their minds until it was time for their break. The 2 boys had been given water bottles. Tsukauchi looked at the 2 boys as he gave them a light smile. "Well, you 2 seem to have some idea of what to do, but you'll need to work hard." Tsukauchi was stern, but his words encouraged the 2 boys. Izuku smiled to himself as he thought about the words. Bakugo, on the other hand, had been thinking about more efficient ways to use his quirk. He could only use it when going back to his trash pile. "Okay, you 2 will be sparring when you're done, so don't use up all your energy." The 2 boys agreed to be careful. After their break, Bakugo and Deku continued doing their thing. Izuku found that much heavier items couldn't be thrown around like the small items, and kicking them would be out of the question, while Bakugo found that he can increase his speed even with one hand, while he runs with a piece of trash in his other. Bakugo's strategy was much quicker now, but if he weren't careful he'd hurt himself, either falling down or slamming into the car because of his momentum. Izuku stood about 30 feet away from Bakugo, who had a slight grin on his face. Tsukauchi stood in the middle of them as he began to speak. "Sparring will be simple. You both will try and get your opponent to fall on their back. You 2 ready?" Bakugo was the first to move. Running towards Izuku, raising his arms behind him, sparks of small explosions let out. He was using the technique he learned earlier. Izuku summoned Rabbit Hole as the 2 dashed forward. Izuku began to run towards the 2 as Bakugo sent both of his arms forward, sending a blast at the bunny. The force of the blast sent the bunny back with him as Izuku jumped up. His bunny companion was able to recover, landing on the ground, using his legs to send Izuku at Bakugo. "You got this, Izuku!" The smoke from the explosions blinded both Izuku and Bakugo, but Bakugo was always quick to notice things, especially in battle, as Izuku's shadow alerted Bakugo of the incoming kick he would receive from the top of his head. Bakugo quickly used an explosion to send himself back, avoiding the kick as Izuku jumped on the ground with a smirk, Rabbit Hole jumping next to the emerald-eyed boy. "Tuh! Damn Usagi!" Izuku ran at Bakugo, his smirk making the ash blonde excited for the fight. Rabbit Hole had launched itself at Izuku, using the force of its hind legs to do so. Bakugo was taken aback by the bunny's speed, as it was dashed at him like a dart. Bakugo was able to duck backwards, nearly dodging the bunny as it flew past. Bakugo caught himself as he prepared to do a backflip. Izuku took his chance, using his foot to kick one of Bakugo's arms. Bakugo lost balance as he began to fall. He attempted to use his quirk to stop himself from hitting the ground, but he received another kick to his side, causing him to gasp in pain. "Gotcha!" the juniper-haired boy tried to say. A strong gust of wind nearly caused him to fall. Bakugo had used his quirk as he flew back, landing on his feet as he looked at Izuku. Gotta try harder than that! Though the juniper-haired boy was frustrated, Izuku was quick to think of another plan as he rushed at Bakugo. The other teen stood there as if he had something planned as well. Rabbit Hole dashed at the ash blonde, already aware of Izuku's plan, though both didn't expect the simple trick Bakugo would try. Bakugo had jumped in the air as the two figures rushed at him, using his quirk once again to cause explosions. Though this time the explosions were aimed beneath him as he rocketed up into the air. Izuku was able to stop as Rabbit Hole had too much momentum. The bunnies slid as the two collided with each other. Both winced in pain. Izuku had little time to call back Rabbit Hole as Izuku hit the ground. The ash-blonde boy landed on the ground with a cocky grin as he walked up to Izuku, helping him up. "Looks like I'm the winner, Usagi!" Izuku sighed in defeat as Bakugo laughed in victory. Honey is a free browser add-on available on Google, Opera, Firefox, Safari. If it's a browser, it has Honey. Honey automatically saves you money when you check out on sites like Amazon, Papa John's, and Kohl's. Wherever you shop, it's a good chance that Honey can save you money. All you have to do when you're checking out at these stores is to click that little orange button, and it will scan the entire internet and find discount codes for you. If there is a coupon code, they will find it. And if there's not a coupon code, you can rest assured that you are getting the best price possible. If you install Honey right now, you can save like $50 to $100 on your shopping, doing nothing. There's literally no reason not to install Honey. It takes 2 clicks, 10 million people use it, 100,000 5-star reviews. Unless you hate money, you should install Honey. The week went by like a flash for the boys. Sparring along with picking up the trash would allow the boys to learn more about physical health and about their quirks. Tsukauchi had been watching the two thoroughly and saw some interesting things. At the end of the week, Tsukauchi had the boys end their training earlier so he could assess if they understood their assignment. Izuku and Bakugo had to take this the most serious, as they learned they would have to do more work, while if they got it right, they would move on to the next exercise. Izuku had learned a lot. His quirk was helpful in many ways, as it can be used to help carry things. Its strong legs allow it to cause things such as metal to break, and that he would have to find situations that allowed him to keep Rabbit Hole out, such as the 50-meter range, as well as the fact overusing his quirk would force him to a near-unconscious state. Bakugo had learned that his quirk was more about his own limits than anything. His explosions could crack and even destroy some material with enough force. He also learned that his quirk is good for mobility. The first time he and Izuku fought, he thought about how he was able to outsmart Izuku. Using his quirk's ability to launch him into the air, he could travel to places much quicker. Though it was difficult when one hand was all he could use, usually resulting in the blonde crashing into the ground or dropping the item he was carrying. Well, I learned that Rabbit Hole is not just good for physical combat, but I can use him in all sorts of ways. Tsukauchi was interested to hear about what Izuku believed, whether they were correct or not. A specific way I learned to use Rabbit Hole was by having him carry the front end of a piece of garbage while I carried the end. It allowed us both to waste little time. Tsukauchi was a little impressed, though he felt like Izuku's explanation lacked something. Tsukauchi was prepared to interrupt Izuku, but then he heard the last thing Izuku would say. Rabbit Hole is a quirk that is best utilized as support, which is why I must be alongside it. By letting it do all the work, I leave myself vulnerable, and Rabbit Hole on his own. Surprised, Tsukauchi looked up at Izuku, who looked determined. The man smiled as he clapped. The juniper-haired boy was quite interested in what the man had to say. You've done a good job so far, Midoriya. I can tell you were thinking hard about your answer, and that you have passed the first test. Izuku smiled widely as the words of his trainer began to set in. The boy had to slap himself to make sure he wasn't dreaming. Tsukauchi, though a little scared for Izuku's well-being, congratulated the boy. Bakugo had been awfully quiet as Tsukauchi had then looked at the ash blonde, curious to see if Bakugo actually had an answer to his training. Bakugo, after a few seconds, finally had an answer. Well, obviously, my quirk isn't the best when it comes to the trash exercise. I had to find ways to use it, even if those ways only helped me with mobility. Tsukauchi had agreed with the Ash Blonde. Bakugo had continued to answer his trainer's question. But thanks to the sparring matches, I've been able to use my quirk with much more openness, figuring out parts of my quirk best used for combat. Though thanks to the combat training, I was able to learn things I would have a difficult time learning myself. Tsukauchi felt like Bakugo had explained enough, telling the boy he was right on track, and it's best if the two got the rest of the day off. They had passed. Bakugo and Izuku obviously congratulated each other, Izuku praising Bakugo for his better behavior, and the young blonde calling his juniper-haired friend intelligent, while saying his tendency to overreact was annoying. The rest of that day was much more calm than usual for the two boys, though that wouldn't be much of a problem for the two. And soon the day would end. Training resumed for the two the following day as they were told that cleaning the entire beach by the end of 2 weeks was their mission. They would spar 2 times at the end of each week to see what they could learn. The 2 weeks for the boys seemed to flash by. Mostly all of the beach was clean by the time the two were done in the 2 weeks. Bakugo had won their second match while Izuku won their third. Izuku and Bakugo were learning quickly, much quicker than he thought. Bakugo had found that he could launch items toward the car with his explosions. Bakugo found that the right amount of force would be best. Using too much would destroy the item, and using too little wouldn't allow the item to go far enough. Izuku found that he could ride on the back of Rabbit Hole while holding something, moving much quicker to get to the truck, and keeping the same distance between the two, while both of the boys were gaining a lot of knowledge about their quirks. The boys' final trial would be taking their biggest weakness and learning how to use other methods to improve upon it. Izuku found that his biggest weakness was his overthinking. While planning ahead was great, but some circumstances acquired him to think on his feet. Bakugo, on the other hand, found that his biggest weakness was his tendency to overreact. He had to find a way to keep himself calm, otherwise his opponents could take full advantage of that. Izuku's task was simple. He would be given a multitude of tasks each day, and he had to complete said tasks in a certain amount of time. Failing to do so would force another task onto the boy. Bakugo's was much more frustrating. He would be given a task each day. His main goal was to complete the task without being distracted. This was annoying to the boy because his tasks would be interrupted by his own training. Spending 2 months with Bakugo allowed Tsukauchi to see exactly what would push the blonde overboard. Izuku and Bakugo struggled. Their weakness wasn't just something they could get rid of, but they had to learn ways to work around their weakness. And the boys would have to get extra creative if they wanted to provide a good answer for Tsukauchi. Thank you all for indulging yourselves in all this information thus far. I hope you enjoyed it. Now, there are a few more things I'd like to go over before the video ends. Firstly, I'd like to thank our patrons. BD Flames, Ethan Davis, Terry Chills, Shifter Meals, Adam Zagel, Zill, Zavbeat03, and Joshua Phelps. Secondly, I'd also like to thank all of our YouTube members. Toya Costa, Rob the King, Sith Lord 906, CF2364 and Knuckles, Remue Tempest, Angel Juarez, Donald C. Stewart, Bryant Grier, and Demonized Fox. Thirdly, if you're in the mood for some great storytelling, We the Celestials has you covered. Our We the Celestials, My Hero Academia, and Naruto What If channels retell the story of their namesake anime with a twist. Check it out if you're interested. Fourthly, on behalf of We the Celestials, I'd like to thank everyone involved in today's excellent content production. Their details can be found in the description below. Lastly, if you're interested in what we do here at We the Celestials, I'd like to extend an invitation to join the team. The only caveat is that we only accept members from 16 years old to join our crew. You can sign up for whichever category fulfills your interest by joining the recruitment Discord using the link in the description below. We're always looking for new members to join us. Well, that's it from us for today's video. So thank you all for watching and have a great day!